Stefano, I'd like to start off with you. Trends for 2012 from a technological perspective. A lot of advancements occurring, and it seems that in some way we're actually not catching up to what we see globally because of this internet issue that we have.
Okay,
is that right?
I don't totally agree with that. So let me just first position the three main trends that we're seeing, and then comment on the second part of your question. The first trend, very clearly, that we've seen is what we'd like to call the post-PC era. This concept of bring your own device. I think everyone nowadays has a smartphone, has an iPad, so you no longer have to be at a PC with a laptop to get connected to the internet, right? So there's a huge evolution going around. How do we connect to the internet with whatever device, wherever you are? So it's all about mobile, it's about being wireless, it's about getting the right information in the right context, the right place and right time to you, okay? So that drives, to a large extent, the evolution of what we're calling intelligent networks, getting the right information to you where it's needed. So that's the first trend. Second trend, very clearly, is we're seeing a major upsurge in video communication across the internet. People, you know, it's a no-brainer. It's a lot easier to communicate via video than it is to send emails and text messages and what have you. And that's obviously creating a very different set of dynamics when it comes to how do we connect to the internet? Do we have the right broadband capability, capacity, and what have you? The third main trend is very much what we're calling cloud-based computing or cloud computing. So it's all about doing computing services in the cloud. I think most of us that use social networks or make use of Google email or whatever, we experience cloud computing in one form or another. And this is the one area where I think there's a huge opportunity for South Africa. And in fact, there's a particular reference that I would like to point out is that late last year, in October, November last year, using our technology but working with Vodacom as a service provider and an organization called NIL Africa, we actually launched a local-based, a South African-based public cloud offering, right, which is out there. So it's a first in South Africa. In fact, it's a first across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We can do it. You know, the technology is available to us with a little bit of invention, a little bit of creativity. We can actually do that, and we can keep up with the rest of the world.
Okay, so are we on par with the rest of the world then, Angus? Okay,
can I don't know if our view of the legacy telecommunications restraints that we had in the continent will always put us in a position where we are behind the rest of the world. IDG recently released a report that talks about the adoption of tablets in the workspace. And South Africa and parts of South America are actually leading the world in the use of mobile devices for corporate usage. Gartner Popular Analyst says about 55% of access to corporate systems is now being done over a mobile device. And this particular quarter that we've just gone through, or going through, it's the first time in history that the mobile devices or smart new form factor devices has surpassed the shipment of PCs, or manufactured PCs. So we've actually crossed a chasm in terms of entering the post-PC era. So we're no longer looking towards it as a future.
The personal computer.
I wouldn't say the personal computer is going to die. I think it's going to have more and more of a niche use. And if you look at the general consumption of the technology that we talk about, in the consumer context and the corporate context, you find there's a culture of consumption of data over the internet. More interesting from a trends perspective, I think and let's talk South Africa specifically, what I'm actually enjoying watching from what our customers are doing, and that's the big corporates, is trying to benefit from the intersection of mobile, internet, cloud, and social. So if you look at consumer behavior, the demand is being created for the consumption of mobile internet through social networks and social computing, and cloud makes it easier to use the data that we want to get to. So the leading chains, and if you look at what FNB as an example is doing with mobile banking, etc., it's market leading. We're one of the fastest shipping markets for iPads in the world. So that linked to the fact that there are developments in mobile internet from the mobile operators and other telecommunications providers, really creating that synergy between the demand, and yes, there are going to be limitations in terms of fiber, you talked about earlier. Fiber is actually at the point where we need so much more to keep up with the demand from the mobile access that we're getting.
I mean, I know that even schools are starting to implement tablets, and it's basically becoming a norm across the board. It would be great if we had fantastic access to internet and not have a cap at 1 gig.
Yeah, I think if you can combine that whole idea of having devices that have all that capability with what Stefano was saying about the cloud and about video. I think a lot of people don't realize about video. When people think video and the internet, they tend to think like YouTube or something consumer. The reality is where we're seeing massive growth is in business video. because we're seeing, you know, the idea of having video conferencing has been around for 30 years. It's just, before we haven't had the networks that really make it happen in an impressive way. So for example, the telepresence platforms that we use, which we have a global network, which courtesy of ourselves and our friends from Cisco, we have global telepresence capability where you can really be in the same room as somebody on the other side of the planet. Now that takes a lot of bandwidth, but you end up with business video that can substitute for transport. Now we're seeing that trend growing across all platforms. So it's not simply a question of, you know, in your office you have a telepresence capability. Now you want to have a capability on your phone, on your iPad, you want to have a capability.
You want everything to work really.
And everything wants to be,
well.
and video drives the bandwidth. So you need LTE to drive this, you need all of the connectivity, and of course you need lots of fiber. And I think the same thing with cloud. We're, you know, South Africans, when you talk about cloud, it's kind of, oh, you know, it's in some foreign thing far away. People are familiar with cloud because they're familiar with the regular consumer services in the cloud. They're familiar with Gmail. They're familiar with, if you can think of Facebook as a kind of cloud service. But we're also starting to see real cloud starting to have an impact here. So infrastructure as a service. So for example, with Telecommunications, our parent company, we have a real cloud offering, an infrastructure as a service offering where you can create a virtual platform to run applications that has no physical presence. It's in the cloud globally, and we're going to be bringing that here.
I'd just like to add, with the applications we're talking about here, we haven't mentioned mission critical apps. We've mentioned Facebook, Gmail. It's going to be a different playing field the moment that I'm trying to use a SAP application, a CRM application. Yep. Video is bandwidth intensive, and video running over contended networks is not a nice experience. Okay, there's jitter, packet loss, so we've got to sharpen our pencil from a price perspective. We've got to commit to throughput speeds, then business critical applications.
Is that going to happen? Could it be a reality in 2012?
I don't. Again, my belief is it depends on the price and the model that's deployed for LTE. If it's too expensive, the investors have got to recover their money. They apply thinking called breakage, so we oversubscribe customers to a network. In that way, we've got more people paying than people using, and that's how we recover our investment. That contention has got an impact on the quality of that network. So we've got to clearly in our mind decide, is it business apps, corporate apps, mission critical apps, what are we?
Well, I think just to bring it back to the perspective of the end consumer and the businesses. From the end consumer now demanding cloud services, whether it's the consumer services or things like CRM, we always use the Salesforce.com example, that's being delivered on a mobile device without LTE. So the rate at which these services are now moving to a cloud delivery model is what's exciting for many businesses. The challenge the CIO faces is they're losing control. Because of the concept we're talking about, smartphones and tablets, bring your own device, the CIO no longer has control. The business has no longer got any control. So what we've done is we've invested a lot of time to bring in a methodology of how we can help a business take control back again of the mobile devices and tablets. But more importantly, what we're seeing is that IT from that perspective is no longer a support platform. So telecoms and the ICT stack is not there just to help a business go and do something. It's becoming an innovation platform. So with more telecommunications access at the right price, 100%, but also as an ability to quickly create products for the sales force to take to market, quickly to be able to scale and globalize.
The internet itself is part of the delivery. So, yes. You know, we often think of cloud, when you talk in the corporate space, people think about, can I virtualize everything that I do in my back office? Is it my IT department that I'm going to virtualize? But you mustn't forget that a lot of what businesses do today is facing the internet. So a lot of the communication that businesses have with their customers, in fact, a lot of the things they deliver today, in fact, over the internet. So if you look at some of the innovation we've seen in the South African banking industry, for example, you'll see that that's been enabled by an underlying communications capability, mobile and fixed.
So let's not kid ourselves, Stefano. I mean, the truth is that LTE comes on board and all these other fancy technological, capabilities that we see on a global level, it's going to be very expensive because we have to pass that stepping block like they did on a global level. But then again, at night I still dream about the way I experience internet in Europe to experience it here in South Africa, where I can do whatever I want at any speed that I want and download as much as I want. Is that going to be a reality?
To be honest, I'm kind of more with Mathen on this one. I think we're starting to see a definite shift towards the emerging market environments where South Africa is probably no different from a lot of countries in the emerging theatre where there is limited connectivity. There's different sets of technologies, a combination of, well, predominantly wireless with limited wireline connectivity. So I think what used to work in Europe and in the Western economies does not apply in the emerging market. And what we're starting to see is because of the growth coming out of emerging markets, we're actually starting to see technology adapt to those markets. So, you know, Mathen used the example of Salesforce.com being made available, and he's right. I mean, I've actually got it on my iPhone, and if I don't have 3G and I'm using Edge, it works.
Yeah.
You know.
And one point there is you've seen the leapfrog from the first world markets. You talk about having access like this in Europe. In the emerging markets, we have the ability to leapfrog the challenges that they're faced with and to be able to adopt newer technologies at a far higher pace. And that's why we're seeing such a rapid adoption of...
Maybe more so on mobile as opposed to...
Yeah. We've seen that trend in voice. I mean, in voice, there's no doubt that the majority of voice carried in developing markets, including South Africa, is on mobile devices. And we see the same trend happening with the mobile internet and with mobile devices really being the predominant platform. Within probably 3 to 4 years, the majority of internet in the world is going to be delivered to mobile devices. Not in bandwidth terms, but in terms of numbers of users.
Jacques, let's look at something. I mean, we're looking at where the internet comes from. We all know that we have these cables coming through from the UK, from the north, and they come through to the African continent. Any chance we can actually get an internet hub in Africa to service Africans?
We can do anything we want to.
It's going to cost, right? Is it cheaper to actually get the cables down on this?
And there's so many cables these days. Wax is on its way.
Yeah.
The perception is that will again reduce the cost for international bandwidth, because international bandwidth is what costs the most money. Local bandwidth is cheap in comparison with international. Can we get a local hub here? Yes, we can from a technology perspective. Can we get it right from a political perspective? And ICASA managing that, I'm not too sure.
I think there's enough capacity, and Angus knows better than I do, but there's enough capacity coming to the continent. We don't have enough capacity in the terrestrial level to get from the landing stations to where the major cities and rural areas need it.
We don't necessarily need a hub here.
There's many interconnection points of all these networks, and that's why the internet works. The challenge is the capacity to get from the landing stations across.
You want to say something?
I'm kind of sitting there saying, what is a hub?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we have tier 1 nodes in South Africa, so if your definition of a hub is a tier 1 node, they're here. In fact, our friends at Neotel have had one for a good number of years. Are we doing local caching? Yes, we're starting to see that. You know, we're starting to see the likes of Google caching locally.
Brilliant.
So that, you know, if we want to access information, we're not bouncing all the way around the world to get the information. So it's a lot more accessible, a lot more readily available here. So that's why I'm sitting there saying, well, what is the definition of a hub? The internet is pervasive, it's everywhere.
But I think the key there is to look at how do we get more capacity at the terrestrial level from a fiber point of view. We need more long-distance capability in fiber. We need the digital cities to play a role as well, considering the footprint and control that they have over their own leeways, and to be able to then participate in this fiber-connected network. And that capacity then unleashes more capability.
Very quickly, Angus.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, exactly that point is that a lot of this is around what is facilitated by policymakers, particularly things like cities. The cities need to make policies that enable the rapid rollout of services, the rapid rollout of fiber, the rapid rollout of competing services.
So the capacity is there, essentially.
The ability to build is there.
Yeah. And right now, Cape Town, City of Cape Town has done that very successfully.
City of Joburg, City of Cape Town, Nelson Mandela.
You can buy services from the council.
Fantastic. We have to leave it there, but thank you so very much for sharing your insights with us. Great to have you on the program. That's all we have for you for this edition of Telco Talk. Until next month, from me, Eleni, Giokos, it's goodbye.